Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Davey Squires.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Squires Station. This episode is presented by Area 67 Studios here in Cuyahoga Falls, and I am your host, Davey Squires. And this episode, the Sprite was provided by Mike. We're drinking Sprite instead of water. What have we turned into? What have we done? What is this? On today's episode, we have artist Amanda Nyx. This is so cool. This is like a video. This is like a first here. We got video. We got art. This is cool. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's been a long weekend, but it's been a good one.
Yeah, this is how you end it, you know?
Isn't even a weekend anymore with COVID? It just keeps cycling. It's the same thing, just cycling.
Yeah, I can't even tell what day it is anymore. It's kind of blending in together. It's Groundhog Day.
Yeah, pretty much.
So how did you? Well, first of all, you're not a typical painter. You're kind of a mishmash of different art styles.
Yeah, so I do a little bit of, you see back here, I do a little bit of more traditional painting. This is, just regular acrylic and brushes on canvas, but I'm not real good at it. This is one of my better ones, but it's very simple. And I draw and I, do a lot of kind of more traditional art type things, but I'm not very well trained, and I'm still working on building the skills and the talent to do the art that I'd like to do in that kind of way. But I do have a lot of fun creating art in a ton of different ways that don't require you to be able to draw or figure out proportions or make things look like something else. So I do a lot of abstract art. I do a lot of performance art, and I do a lot of installation art, building large scale things that people can actually play with and interact with. And today we're going to do something a little smaller scale than that, but a little bit of an abstract art form called Flute Acrylic. And so that's kind of the meat and potatoes of my two-dimensional art.
Yeah. So is this Fluid Acrylic? Is this something you created yourself, or were you inspired by someone else?
This is a very, very popular. Some people call it a craft. I really hate I hate saying something's a craft because that tends to give people this idea of like, oh, okay, it's something you do in a kindergarten class. It's not real art. But you've got crafters, you go to a craft fair and you see stuff that really truly is really high level art, but people look down on it because it's not fine art or visual art. But these categories of craft versus art are really pretty fluid, just like my paintings. And this is considered often by most people a craft because it's so accessible, but it is truly an art form. And let's see if I can grab one here. Something like this guy. I don't know if you can see that painting. This is a fluid art piece that I think rivals a lot of more traditional art kind of qualities. So I am hesitant to call it a craft, but it is definitely something that's pretty widespread because it is an accessible way for anyone of any ability or any age to create something beautiful.
Yeah. Would you say it's your favorite type of art form?
Oh gosh, no, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. There's so many, the world of art, I'm actually an art historian by my studies. And the world of art is so incredibly broad. To pick a favorite kind of art does a disservice to what art is. Because I freaking love horrible movies. And horrible movies is an art form too. So who's to say what the best art form really is or what my favorite even is? I just really enjoy seeing people create things and seeing just the entire spectrum of all the things that people can create.
Yeah, I love horrible movies. The Room is probably one of my favorites. Tommy was
I don't know if I've seen that one.
He is spectacular. Like, so when did you get into painting? Did you start early or?
I've I've always made stuff. I have always done something that would be considered a creative pursuit. For a long time, it was writing. There was dancing early on, and then art stuff and crafting, and always kind of doing creative things along the way. But to really dive into art as a potential career was about 2.5 years ago. I literally walked out of a job that was really not serving me anymore, and realized that there are better ways than to force myself into a job that doesn't pay me well enough for the hours it's demanding and for the toll it's taking on my life. And to do something that means something to me, whether it pays the bills or not, is more important. So I structured my life around being able to create rather than created around the structure of my life. And I have found that so incredibly fulfilling. And I've done actually better financially, I think, doing that because I was in a better spot myself. So that's been about, I think it was mid 2018 that I really dove off into it. I started with, I was doing galaxy painting. There's an example here. What I'm talking about. I would do galaxy paintings and then I would draw over them. So I don't know if you can see that there. That was a feather one. And this one here has got a bit of a lotus flower on it. So I would just paint a canvas with this just random colors in a galaxy background, flick some white paint at it for stars, and then take a paint pen over it. And it turns out people like that. And I was better at it than I thought. So I was like, all right, well, what else can I do to create that people like that maybe can bring in a little bit of money and sustain itself while I work on working from home and building a life that lets me find where my creative power really is. So it was diving into that and then building from there.
Yeah, that's awesome that you can kind of, not only get inspiration from it, but make money off of it, and it becomes its own thing. So do you do any like flow painting or any painting while like bands are playing at all?
So this would be considered flow painting. Up there's a couple of what's it called? I can't even think of it. Alcohol inks, that's another kind of fluid art. I do a lot of live art, which I think is what you're asking about. Yeah. Sometimes it is fluid painting kinds of things like the fluid acrylics, or I'm sorry, the alcohol inks. I do have a special setup for that where I put it on an overhead projector, one of those old school, you'd see it in class and they'd write at the vis-a-vis markers on it and project it on the wall. I do that with clear transparency papers and have a big screen, and I do that with live music, and I do one piece per song. I usually do that with my partner, Michael McFarland, who you interviewed recently. Oh, yeah. So we do that. We've actually traveled all over the country doing some of that, some of the more traditional painting. I don't usually do something like fluid acrylic as a live event because it takes a long time to dry, but I love doing fluid art. But at this point, we perform together more often with my flow dance. So I'm still a flow artist, but it's more about movement and less about the visual art. So flow a lot.
Yeah. So how big, we were talking about earlier, how big do those fluid acrylic like canvases get?
You are only limited by the size of the space you have. I've got a few little ones today because we'll do a couple of them. This one isn't a fluid acrylic, this big guy over here. This is actually a spray paint piece that I did. I don't think there is out of the glare. But you can do fluid acrylic on pretty much any size, and it doesn't have to just be canvas. I've done fluid acrylic on, there's a wood piece up there. These ones are actually wood pieces for the alcohol inks. I dropped it. I've got a couple other little examples, like I've done these little ornaments that are just on wood pieces. And so you can pour on a lot of things. Some of the considerations to keep in mind is that you need to keep it relatively flat because it does take a long time to dry. And by a long time to dry, I mean, this 9x12 could take 24 hours to dry fully, maybe even more, depending on how humid it is. So if you leave it on a place that's not flat, your paint's gonna slowly slide off.
Yeah.
And this has been disastrous a few times in this house where I put bigger pieces on the floor. We're in my dance studio right now. I just threw up some extra artwork so that we can see what I'm doing, but this is usually an empty dance space. And I've done some things on the floor here, and the floor here is not quite level. So I woke up the next morning with a mostly blank canvas and a puddle of paint. And my dog found that puddle first. So it was a lot of fun to clean that up. But if you can keep it flat enough, if you can keep the surface flat enough, because on a larger canvas, you may have a spot in the middle that's unsupported and the paint will flow to that and sag. So you want to make sure you're keeping it supported. You can pretty much pour on anything, but you just want to keep that kind of stuff in mind.
Shall we get started with the?
Yeah, let's do a little bit of flute acrylic. So flute acrylic is you use acrylic paint and some fluid, and it's called fluid medium. And you create these abstract works of art. And let me see, I had the one, but pull a different one off the wall here. This is one of my all-time favorites that I did. You can see that there. And they're all, everyone will be unique. It'll be pretty much impossible to hang something straight again. It'll be pretty much impossible to ever replicate the same thing twice. And that's one of the things I love about it. Early on in doing this, I was making prints of some of my favorites. And then I realized making a print of something that can never be replicated kind of defeats the purpose. So I don't make prints of them anymore. I just do originals. They're quick and easy to do. And I'll go over real quick the supplies that I use. So if anyone's watching this and wants to give it a try, you can pretty much learn from what I'm going to do here. If you have any questions, you can always contact me. You're going to need a fluid medium. I use Floetrol in this big gallon container. This is actually an industrial paint additive that you can get at Home Depot. It's super cheap. It was like $4 for a gallon. If you go to a craft store, you will find pouring medium. I think you can even get this at places like Walmart now. It's becoming a popular trend. Pouring medium is probably going to be a lot more expensive for a lot less and doesn't necessarily do a better job. So go cheap. So I have the Floetrol here. I have cups for mixing my paint with the Floetrol. I have liquid silicone, 100% liquid silicone. This is the Blaster spray. Spray silicone. It's the green bottle if you get it at, again, Home Depot, like $3 a can. I've never used more than one can. I've been doing this for 2.5 years. You'll need something to stir with, so like popsicle sticks. And let me know if you can't see this. If it's too far away, I can bring something close to the camera. You'll need canvases. It's good to have a surface covering. And then I have ways to prop my canvases up so that the runoff doesn't, so that the canvas doesn't sit in the runoff of the paint. You'll see why that's helpful in a minute. I have these cups. You can use, you know, like a, I don't know, it's probably really hard to see this against all the stuff back there. I've just got like a cookie drying rack, cooling rack rather, that I got at, you can get them 2 for $1 at the dollar store. You can also get little trays that you can have the paint in. Those will fit nicely in like a cookie tray. So you can get cheap disposable stuff or even just reuse it every time as long as you keep it relatively clean. So a lot of the supplies are very cheap, very easy to come by. The thing that you'll need the most of is paint. And I have, you guys can't see it because it's under the table, but I have a giant tote of paint and several other boxes of paint. You can use any kind of paint. You can use the tube paints, like the craft store generic brands, or the fancier ones like the Liquid Texas. You can use the little bottles of craft paint that you might see at a more general store or even at the craft store. You can use tub paints. You can really use any kind of acrylic paint for this. I would not recommend using oil paint. But I do think you can probably get away with tempera paint too. But generally acrylic's the one to use. So with all these things, another good thing to have is paper towels. And I always forget that, so remind myself to put them there. And I think we're good. I think we're good to go. So I'm going to start by mixing some paints. And to do this, I'm going to pour some Floetrol. And I wish I looked all over the house for clear, ooh, this needs to be shaken up, for clear cups so you can see what's going on in the cup.
You got your blue.
I do not have any around, so we'll do the best we can to make sure you can see what's happening here. This has been sitting around, so this needs to be shook up a bit. There we go. Get my workout in. All right. So you can see as I'm pouring this, it's kind of a creamy white substance. No jokes. It's just a creamy white substance. And I'm going to pour In each of these cups, I'm pouring just a little bit less than like an inch deep. And I've poured 5 cups worth here. We probably won't even use all of them for the first painting. But Davey, how about you tell me your 4 favorite colors, or just pick 4 colors?
Red, blue, green, yellow.
Red, blue, green, yellow. Do you like dark blue or light blue?
Let's do a light blue.
Light blue, light blue, light blue, light blue. And would you like a dark or a light green?
What'd you say?
A dark or a light green?
How about a dark green?
Dark green, all right. So here we've got the 4 colors. And I'm going to take each color and I'm going to put just a little bit, a couple of blobs of each color, 1 into each cup. And everyone who does this will have a different paint to fluid ratio. Some people will do a heck of a lot of paint and just a little bit of the fluid medium. Some people will do a heck of a lot of fluid medium and just a little bit of paint. I do a pretty good amount of fluid medium and then start with a small amount of paint because I can always add more pigment as we go. So at this point, inside the cup, it pretty much looks like a white substance with just maybe a hint of color if it's floating on the top. I'm going to stir these up. And when we're stirring it, we're trying to make sure we're getting a pretty homogeneous color. So we want to make sure it's well blended. But you can always leave it a little bit less blended because it could give you a different kind of look when you're actually pouring it. And a lot of the stuff, there's really no right or wrong way to do this. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. Everyone's going to do it a little bit differently, and everything's going to come out somehow. Not always great, but that's part of the experimentation. And I've tried to replicate things that came out really cool, and my second version of it was terrible. And I've also had some that looked awesome as soon as I poured them, and then the next day didn't look good anymore because the paints keep moving before they dry.
Yeah.
And I've had others where it looked terrible the day I poured them, and then the next day they had moved and come out beautifully. So you never really know what you're going to get. What do they say? Life's like a box of chocolates.
Yeah.
So here we go. We've got our 4 colors. And what I'm going to do for this one is called a dirty pour. It's the simplest version. I'm going to take all the colors and I'm going to pour them into this cup. And you can see here, as it pours out, you can see the colors. And I'm going to do them in whatever order I damn well please. And I'm going to mix them up a little bit.
You go, girl.
And that's one of the best things about this is it's just go for it. Just go for it. One thing I totally forgot to do on this, I'm going to put a little bit of silicone in each cup. Quick spray in each cup and then mix it up. Should have done this first, but it's okay. You don't have to use silicone in this. It does it accelerates the formation of what's called cells. And those are the bubbles where the paint comes through. And I didn't use any yet, but there's already cells in my cups, so I really don't need it. I figured I'll just put it in for demonstration's sake for now. And we'll keep going. And for this size of canvas, I'm pretty much going to just fill up the cup. Pretty much to the top. You want to make sure you have enough paint to cover your canvas. Unless you're doing something where you're trying not to cover the canvas. It's better to have more than have less because you will have a lot that runs off the sides. So continuing to pour all this in here. Finish it off with the last bit of red. And I've done this enough times that like I kind of knew when I was pouring the original amount of the fluid medium how much I was going to need to get a full cup. So I have it here. All right, so we've got all these. Inside the cup, you can see I've got this mix of all these colors. This is called a flip cup style. So it's a dirty pour because it's got all the colors in the same cup to start with. And it's a flip cup because I'm putting the canvas over it and holding the back over the cup, flipping it over. You can see there, we've got it. It's a secret still. And then this is my favorite part. And when I teach this I do like private birthday parties and stuff like that. And I do festival workshops with this where people can just come up, make one and walk away and come pick it up later. This is my favorite part for everybody. They're so surprised by this. We're going to hold down the canvas and we're going to pull this cup straight up. And this is where the magic happens.
Ooh. Whoa.
I like to just kind of put my extras at the corners to help make sure that the corners get some paint. All right, nice empty, pretty cup there. And now you can see it's only kind of centralized here. These are stretched canvases, so the back has got this wooden frame, which means the middle sags a little bit. So we're going to try and help our paint out by tilting. And you can tilt quick, which will create big differences in the paint. You can tilt slow, which will make everything move much more slowly. And the aim here is to get the paint to the edges.
The matrix.
I'm going to use my finger to help it along over here, break some of that tension on that side. I think my Floetrol is maybe a little old. It's very, very runny. It's not usually this runny. It should be a little bit thicker. So this one may dry unusually. You can get very messy doing this too. So if you don't want to get your fingers dirty, wear gloves. But it's also acrylic paint, so it washes off really easily. I like to get my fingers right in there and get dirty. So you'll see me just touching everything. Come down to the side.
Almost like a tie-dye.
Yeah, it kind of, this particular type will look a lot like tie-dye. Let's see here. Patch up the edges. Some other versions will look very, 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 very different than this though. And there's a couple of spots in here where I have really big lumps from the Floetrol, which definitely needs to be shaken a little bit more for the next one. But there we have a thing. And you can see in here, I'm going to try to pick the camera up, see if I can get everybody a really good view of what this looks like. So again, pardon the motion. So you can see here, there's a bunch of little, these are what are called the cells, these little bubbles here, where there's color popping through color, popping through color. And that happens on its own with Floetrol. You can also see the reflection of my light. Sorry about that. That'll happen on its own without the silicone, but adding the silicone really brings that out a lot too. It's basically a chemical reaction that creates this rubbing inside of the paint that allows those other colors underneath to come out. So you can see there.
So it's all layering.
So you layered it in the cup, and then the what am I trying to say here? Once it's layered in the cup, the silicone rubs on the surface here and creates that resistance between the two different colors.
Okay.
So your layering is really pretty randomized when you're pouring it into that dirty cup when all the colors went in. And then on here, it's just the chemical reaction taking its kind of final form.
Mm-hmm. Now I gotta ask: is there a color combination that you think works the best?
You know, I have tried hundreds of color combinations. I have seen and taught people who have tried things I never would have thought to try. And there are very, very, very few things that don't come out looking pretty cool. I'll be honest, there's a lot of colors in here that I'm not usually a fan of. I don't use a lot of yellow. I've used red pretty sparingly. And the way that this has come out in here, I love, love, love the yellow high contrast. Yeah. I normally wouldn't even want to use that color. And here it's making this kind of blue-green tone versus this bright, warm red, but you've got this yellow in there that's kind of unexpected and really pops out of everything. So it's really up to whatever colors you want. There are some that I could probably tell you, those aren't going to do great. They're probably going to muddy up a little bit depending on the type of painting you're doing. But for the most part, any color combination has a good chance of working if you mix them right. So with that one done, I'm going to start mixing a couple of paints for another demo. We've got a couple more canvases here to show kind of some of the different variety you can get with this medium. But while I'm doing that, I'm not going to explain this version or this mixing. Do you have any other questions you want to ask me or anything you want to talk about?
Well, I was going to ask, does it matter how much liquid silicone is actually in the cup?
You don't need a lot. You really don't need a lot of the silicone. A little will go a long way. I put one quick spritz, like, and I was done in each of the cups. Some people will say you can use a lot more. Some people say you should use a lot less. Everyone's got a different take on this. I really use very, very sparingly, and I've never had a problem. You can also get liquid silicone in like a jelly kind of form, more like an actual liquid versus a spray. That's usually treadmill lubricant. But I find that to be very messy and difficult to deal with. So I rarely use anything like that.
I feel like it would be weird using jelly, like.
It's not jelly. It's GEL-Y, gel-y.
Oh.
Gel-like. I didn't say that very well.
E.
That was my fault. That was a really awkward way to say that. For this one I'm going to do now, I'm using some much thicker paints, hoping that'll thicken up some of this fluid since it's really, really runny. They're going to be iridescent paints. So you see me scooping them, it's because it's a little heavier. So I'm kind of leaving it on this so people can see it's constantly changing. And I don't know if you can tell, but it's constantly dripping off the sides. Things are moving out, things are moving in. So this painting, by the end of our conversation here, isn't even going to look the same as it was at first.
I'm sure by the time it dries, it'll look totally different. Like,
it will. After about an hour, you can usually figure that that's stopped moving big movements. So like probably by the end of the time we're talking, it'll look pretty close to how it'll probably end up drying. But even that's not a sure thing. So, oh no, I just splashed all over me. Perils of being an artist. Paint everywhere. There we go. All cleaned up. But yeah, I think it should probably probably come together nicely by the end of the conversation. Probably.
So these small ones take 24 hours to dry? Is that what you said?
They can take, it depends on your room temperature and it depends on your humidity. So if it's very, very humid, it'll take much, much longer to dry. If it's a very dry, warm environment, it'll dry up much, much faster. You can usually tell how dry the painting is by kind of looking at it at a different angle. You'll see it's very reflective while it's wet, and once it dries up, the colors will change in their intensity a little bit. So because they'll dry up and they won't be quite so vibrant in some cases. In other cases, they'll stay plenty vibrant, but they'll definitely look flatter rather than shiny. They'll look matte. And that's a really good way to tell where the drying is. So it'll often start drying on the outer edges and move in, and this in the center where the paint's going to be the heaviest will take the longest to dry.
Okay.
So we're going to do something a little bit different over here. We're going to do what's called a swipe. I actually need to mix one more color for this. A swipe is a different style of painting where you pull, fluid painting, where you pull a contrast color across the surface of your main colors. And for this, I'm going to use white as my contrast color, but you can pretty much do anything. Sticks, go. You can pretty much do any color as your contrast color. You can also do Technically, you can do a dirty pour as your contrast color, so we can mix all the colors together like we did on the previous canvas, and then pull that across. You know what? I think I'm gonna save that white. I have mixed here these colors.
Ooh.
They're all iridescent, so you can see there those colors. And I think I'm going to use this dark blue as my contrast color over these much lighter colors. I think that might be more interesting. So I am going to, this is what I'm doing now is basically called a puddle pour, where I'm pouring the paint right onto the canvas without mixing them together, like I did on the last one. And you can see here, I'm just kind of, whatever, pouring it around. You can tilt this around without doing a swipe over it if you'd like this kind of a look. I am going to tilt it just a little bit. I didn't put any silicone in any of these either. I am talking myself out of remembering my order of operations. So I'm going to make sure I put silicone in my contrast color, and that should be plenty.
Remember the silicone, folks.
Again, you don't really need it, but it can help a little bit. So for this, you can see I've left, I'm pretty much just going to leave that there. I got pretty good coverage. And I'm going to grab, well, I'm going to show you that I would normally use this tool. It's a palette knife with a nice offset here so that it can get right on the canvas and pull. But instead of using that, I'm actually going to use a paper towel to do my drag here.
Whoa.
And what we're doing is pouring this contrast color along one edge, and we're going to pull it evenly across the rest of these colors. I'm going to do that by gently dragging this.
Whoa, that's cool.
I love swipe art. I think it's so much more fun than just a puddle pour or anything else. These other ones that we did before are really, really cool too. But something about the bubbliness on this is just always gets me. So I'm going to go back over it with this because I didn't get a great, I think my canvas is a little bit oddly shaped here. You can see at the sides where it's not quite getting it. So I'm going to kind of do a second swipe, and I'm going to move this. And I'm just playing around with it. That was one of the best things about Flute Acrylic. Again, you really can't do anything wrong. So I'm going to squiggle some more paint over this way. And let me bring some of this back down here.
That's groovy.
And maybe some of this over here. I really like this one already. I think those are good color choices, and I'm glad I did the blue. I'm also going to move it this way a little bit because I can, because it's so fluid. So I'm going to stretch out some of this and make sure I get good coverage on my canvas. I'm not going to lose too much of that coolness. I'm just going to move it around. So I think something like that. Ooh, I like that.
Wow, that's cool.
There's a bit of a blob over here. Sometimes Floetrol has these like junky bits in it, and I don't always catch them when they're pouring into the cup. But yeah, that's a pretty cool one. I'm gonna pick up that camera and show you. So again, on this one, you'll see the cells are much, much bigger because of the nature of how swipe works. So you can see these big bubbles here. I had pulled the blue across it, so the bubbles came up through it, and that's why you get this really delicate lacy patterning around those cells. And that's pretty characteristic of a swipe, is something like that. But you'll see even inside of the ones that the blue went around, can you see that in there? I don't know if I'm too close. You can see that there's just like layer upon layer in there of these bubbles because I layered the paint as I was pouring it on. So that's that there is a swipe pour.
Wow.
See how easy this is? Anybody can art. And this is why I love doing this. Everything that I've really done in the craft art world has really been aimed at finding opportunities to make art accessible to more people, because I think a lot of people think, you know, they come to my art classes where I teach the wine and paint kind of classes, and they come in and they're like, I'll never be able to do that. I'm not an artist. I can't draw to save my life. How many times have you heard people say that, right?
Yeah.
But I can't draw. I mean, I can now because I've been practicing it for 2 years and took a bunch of classes, but you don't have to draw. Did I draw anything here? And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So getting people over that, you know, kind of idea that you have to have all this talent in some hyper specific way to be an artist is really what I'm all about.
It'd be really cool if you put UV paint. Have you ever done stuff with UV paint?
Why, in fact, yes, I have.
Wow.
I have tons and tons of paint. I have everything you might want. But a lot of the UV paint really does not come out that good.
Huh.
I don't know if it's because of mixing it with the fluid medium. I don't know if it's because I haven't gotten nice enough UV paints. I have had a couple that have worked nicely, but on the whole, I've been pretty disappointed in my UV paint experiments. But I do think maybe some of that is because I'm not using the right quality of paint. Possibly, I don't know.
Who knows? It's all a puzzle.
Exactly, and it's all experimentation. You know, you can get tiny little canvases and mix up a cup of this, and then take 10 canvases, do the same colors on all of them, but try totally different things with all of them, and you never know what you're going to get. And that's part of the fun of art in general, is finding the way that works for you or for your purpose. I'm mixing up another set of those same colors, at least the lighter ones. So I'm going to do something a little different on my third and final canvas over here. So for this one, I've got these tiny little plastic shot glasses, basically. And I'm going to do, and this is just, again, just trying to show kind of the wide variety of styles you can do. There's all kinds of things that fluid acrylic can do for you. You can do stuff like the dirty pours, which are really easy for kids. You can do the swipes, which get really, I think, very finely artistic a lot of the time. You can do puddle pours, which are super simple. You can do what's called a string pour, where you'll cover it all in maybe a single color. Dip a string in one of your mixed colors, drape that on the canvas, and pull it very slowly off. And it'll leave the residue of that color that the string was dipped in and look like flowers. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can pour it through a strainer or something like this, and that looks cool. Well, actually, let's see. What do we want? Do we want to do a strainer pour, or should we try a float cup where I put a bunch of white paint in it and then I let this kind of go wherever it wants to go? What do you want to see?
I kind of want to see the strainer.
Let's do the strainer.
That kind of looks cool.
Let's do the strainer. It sounds like an old dance move. Like everyone in the 50s was doing the strainer. Now I'm like making up a strainer dance over here. You guys can't see me, but you can see my body moving and my legs moving. Doing the strainer.
You hustle.
All right, so I'll do an extra cup for that and do this. So for this one, I am going to pretty much just pour into this strainer and see how it goes. I haven't used this particular one yet, so who knows what we're going to get.
Here we go. Woo. Oh. Woo. It's like an egg.
This is probably not the right strainer to use for this.
Ooh. Whoa. Huh?
Some white in here.
Ooh. Whoa. Whoa.
Who knows what the I cannot even really see what's going on in the middle underneath this, but
Wow.
maybe it's cool.
It looks cool going outwards. Ooh. Looks like a dessert.
What's that?
Looks like a dessert.
I like some of these colors that like the green kind of makes me think of like key lime pie or something, and the purple looks like a really tasty frosting. There we go. Now we've got some colors on there. Who knows how this is going to turn out? This is what I love about Flute Acrylic. Who knows how this is going to turn out? I'm going to move this around. I'm kind of shaking it a little bit to get this to move quickly and for some of it to spread out.
Shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. Wow. That looks like tie-dye too. That's cool.
And I've got a really good bead of thick paint here that I'm going to swirl around like this. I can see where the paint is thickest and it's going to move fast. So I'm trying to get a little bit of an extra swirl into this.
Swirly, swirly. Whoa. Hypnotized.
There, something like that maybe. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Not really what I expected, but cool. Move that over a little bit because it's definitely sagging into the middle. Kind of looks like a geode slice or something.
Yeah. It's like a swirly, like a little, it's like a pink cinnamon bun.
Ooh. Don't get me started on cinnamon buns.
Pink.
Trying to lose some weight over here, man. So there we go. There's three very different styles. I'm going to pick this camera up and go in close to this one. I'm going to look at the other ones that we looked at before to see how they're doing. I feel like it's an old reality show. We're like, we're going to go check in on our former contestants, see how they're doing. So here's the one we just did. And you can see how I followed that paint around the swirl. I'm sorry, I'm moving that way too fast for how close I am. And you can see on the edges, some of that is the white paint that I put through, and some of it is just the edge of the canvas, but it still looks like part of the cells. And for that one, I had reused the cups I had previously used, which meant that only the blue one had silicone in it, and I still got plenty of the cells of all the colors. So here's the one we had. Here's the first one we did. You can see originally we had a big thing of red right here and a lot of yellow kind of trickling this way. The red has moved out a lot more. See if I can get there we go, this side. So there's been a lot of movement. You can see some of the chunkiness here of the paint, of the Floetrol, and we still have a lot of really vibrant red and some fleckles of yellow. So we still have some good contrast in there, even though it's kind of murkying a little bit. And then finally over here, we've got that swipe we did, and it looks like a lot of the movement is going this way. You can see not a lot dripping off of this edge, which means that all the paint went over here, where you can see my big puddle.
Hey.
And this is why it's important to cover your surface. But I really still like how this is going. I kind of think the stretched out cells look really, really cool still.
The one on the left is definitely my favorite.
This one?
The other.
This one. Yeah. This one. Yeah, I really, really like how that came out. The iridescent paint will probably look really, really pretty. That blue is going to have a ton of shimmer to it. And this one will have a lot of that too, I think. But it's just definitely a very different style. And you can see those were the same sets of colors with wildly different looks to how they came out at the end.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of things you can do to play with this. I've seen people, put a cup upside down in the middle and then pour their cup over that. And so it spreads out over a cup and there's a space in the center with nothing. And you pull that out and it backfills and looks totally different. There's all kinds of ways to play with this. I think I've even seen people take a second canvas and smush it together with the one they just painted and they'll pull it away and they both look totally different because they look like a smushed version of each other, or use balloons and dip that in the paint and then dip it on another canvas. So there's all kinds of stuff people can do to play with this and have fun, and you almost always end up with something that looks pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was gonna ask you what you've been up to this year because of the pandemic. Have you been creating a lot more?
So this year ended up being a total surprise. I've done a lot of creating early on in the pandemic, probably late March and most of April. I was doing a lot of live stream art classes. I even did this in the same setup here. I would do drawing classes and painting classes, and I did one where we drew. I taught people how to draw graffiti lettering and color that in interesting ways, and I did a discussion of all the different types of drawing media and supplies that you can use for art. And a lot of people were enjoying those. I also did a lot of live stream dance concerts, and I still do at least once a month. But what really ended up happening for me this summer was at the end of May. I don't know if you heard about this thing, but there was a little bit of like a protest thing going on, and it kind of spread throughout the whole country. And I know most people probably didn't hear about this, but I heard about it and it touched me, and I really wanted to get involved. And so I called my friends at Ingenuity Cleveland, and I work a lot with Ingenuity for a lot of the festivals and Bright Winter, Ingenuity Fest, other events, building the large scale art. And I said, hey, I would really love to start an arts activism program where we can use the boards that were put up over the broken windows downtown as a space for people who have chronically not had their voices heard on an equal level to the rest of us, to paint their messages and get a little bit more visibility. Wanted to find people of color and LGBT people and anybody who has really been in a marginalized group that expresses themselves through art, to beautify these boarded up windows and to call attention, not just put a band-aid over, but actually call specific attention to the results of years and years of just shutting those voices out, really give them a big stage. And it turns out that Ingenuity had a connection with the Downtown Cleveland Alliance, and between me and Ingenuity and DCA, we did start a program called Voices of CLE. And we were able to create, we weren't able to get it moving in quite enough time to get boards on the windows painted in a lot of places, because the glass companies worked so fast to get those windows fixed.
Mm.
But we did get all of those companies to donate their boards from their windows to us. And we built freestanding mural walls out on Public Square and in Wade Oval and a couple other places. And we hired artists to come in and paint their messages about political change, social justice, racial equity. And we're still continuing that program. We're not entirely sure what the next phase will look like, but we've been looking at developing performances, mobile galleries, all kinds of things like that to continue that program and to continue sending those messages. Then on top of all that, if that wasn't enough, my friend Meg Stepka, again, we mentioned her earlier, she is the open mic queen of Cleveland, hosts all these open mics, creates a lot of opportunities for musicians. She, among many others, had this idea to start virtual concerts at the beginning of this pandemic to help artists get more visibility and hopefully more income. And she created a model called the 48-Hour Virtual Music Festival. And I have been helping her do some of the administrative work there, do some of the promotions, writing press releases, things like that, and performing at those. And that continues. We're actually doing the next one next week. So I'm not sure if when you're putting this recording up, but that will be December 18th if this comes out before then. And if not, look for the last weekend in January for the next one. And we're just going to keep that going. We're starting to partner with local music organizations and other charity organizations to raise money for different causes every month. So that's kind of become my pandemic thing, is to try and create opportunities for people who are struggling in different ways to use their arts and creativity to express themselves, to be heard, to continue building their careers.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
So what are some tips you would give to any artists just starting out?
That is a tough one because every artist is different and every artist's goals are different. I would say one of the best things to know is that it's going to be hard, but if it's worth it, keep going. It's up to you as an artist to determine what is worth it to you. Is a low paying, barista job to support your, I call it a habit, your art habit. Is that something that you're okay with? Or is it something where you really want to go make sure you have that security of a 9-to-5 job, and then you're just going to create around that and slowly build? It depends a lot on your goals. It depends a lot on what you are comfortable with, what you are capable of is your living situation. I know lots of people who kind of say screw it to financial security. They say, this is who I am, this is what I love, and I will die trying to make this happen. And they do okay. Not always great, not always poorly, but they do okay, and it's something that they are willing to shoulder. For me, I really wish I could have dove into it a little bit sooner, but it took me some time to understand what I was really getting into, and I just kept the passion alive until it was time to really jump on it. So I would say anybody starting out is understand your own goals and understand your own limitations. If they can fit together, go hard for it. If they don't, peer network. Talk to people who are doing the things that you want to do. Talk to people who know people who do things that you want to do. Get involved. Find support systems that can help move those limitations so that your goals are more possible. And that's really, the biggest thing is understanding goals and then finding ways to work towards them.
The wise words of Amanda Nyx.
I don't know if they're wise, but they're my words.
Hey, well, thank you for Zooming for this time. This was an awesome interview. I really enjoyed this demonstration. I'm really excited to see too how these turn out.
Yeah, I'll send you some pictures when they're all dry. They could be totally different. Who knows?
Yeah, that's really cool how they keep forming even when they're drying.
And I'll sometimes adjust, like I just moved this cup out here because I think this edge is a little bit higher, so it'll keep it a little flatter. And I'll, look over these. I can't move this table until they're dry. Yeah. So this is thin right here. And so I'll keep coming by and I'll be like, all right, so maybe we move that, maybe we'll tilt it a little bit more. Just kind of manipulating things until I'm happy or until they're too dry to work with anymore. But you can do other things too. Like if I start to really not like something, I got a little straw here and I'll just go in and in fact, I'm going to just do it on this one real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, just blow it around.
And you'll end up exposing different colors in the paint.
Oh, yeah.
And I got this big blob here and I hit that blob and it had so much paint in it.
Yeah, just take a straw and do that. That's cool. Huh.
So that's going to come out totally different now than it was before, but we pulled some of these more raw colors out. Lost some of the detail here, but as it dries, it'll thicken a little bit and I might hit it again. And we'll see how that comes out. So there's all kinds that you can keep playing with. I mean, there's nothing that says, oh, it's done.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting. This that swirl one we did has changed a lot. Take this over there real quick, and then we can sign out here. But see that? So it's kind of coming this way, and I'm losing that swirl that I made, but I still have a really neat geode slice kind of feel. So I'm kind of still digging that. But yeah, that's just goes to show you how different these things can get over time. And that, nothing is set in stone with these things until it's set in stone. And then if you really, really, really don't like it, you can draw over it. I had one that I really did not like. It was a bunch of greens, greens and golds that kind of got mixed together and turned a little muddy. And the gold really muted down when it dried. So I took a white paint pen and I drew over it. And I have a copy of that here. Yeah, this guy. And losing something. Okay. Sure what's going there. I don't know if you can see it there. The white one on the side. I just started drawing. Come around and pull this up a little bit better. I just started drawing on it. And now I have something that I like much, much more.
That's so cool.
There we go. So, you can keep playing with it. You can turn it into something else. And if you really, really, really hate it so much, once it's dry, you can pour over it. You just pour a whole new painting over it.
Yeah.
Why not?
So where can they find you at?
I go by Fiercely Serene for all of my painting and dance and installation art. FiercelySerene.com. You can find me on Facebook under Fiercely Serene as well. And then I also have 3 Instagram channels, one for kind of each of the divisions of what I do. If you like this kind of thing, you're going to want to go to @FiercelySerene on Instagram. If you want to see the big things that I build, including a $10,000 installation we built last year that's a giant Zen garden, a 15 by 15 foot Zen garden that makes music as you rake through it because of the lights on the floor. Did you know about this? Did Michael tell you about this at all?
I don't think I've heard of it.
We built this giant thing. It's got a light up floor. So we built this mobile floor. You can use modules and you can put it together and take it apart and travel with it. It's got lights on it. You put gravel over it as like a Zen garden. And then there's a camera above it. And as you rake through it and the sand changes the light intensities in the different areas of the floor, it dictates what the music in the room is going to be. Because each section has a note assigned to it. And if it's bright, it plays louder. And if it's dim, it plays quieter.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's that kind of stuff if you're interested in big scale builds. And if you want to get involved in large scale builds, once COVID's over, Ingenuity does a lot of public workshops so you can learn how to make that stuff. That is @FiercelySerene_installations on Instagram. And then if you want to see my dance stuff, including fire dancing, that's @FiercelySerene_flows on Instagram.
And those will all be in the description, either on the video or on Spotify or wherever you're listening and watching this. So, and you can find me on Instagram @Davy_Squires, and you can find me on Facebook, Davy Squires Music. I also have a Patreon right now. It's patreon.com/Davy Squires. And I believe that is it. You can find me on YouTube, Davy Squires. That's it. So yeah, thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on here and demonstrating this. This was so cool. Well, that is it for this week, and I will check all you guys out next time.